The email from Morgan Technologies sat in my inbox like a time bomb. Urgent. Environmental compliance consultation request. I could almost taste the desperation bleeding through their carefully worded message. My brother's company, the same company that had mocked my worthless environmental science degree for years, was now facing millions in fines and possible shutdown over environmental violations. And I was the only consultant who could save them. Miss Parker. My assistant Jade's voice came through the intercom. Your brother's been calling every hour. Should I keep blocking him? I smiled, remembering last Thanksgiving's family dinner. The last time I'd seen James Morgan, CEO of Morgan Technologies, my beloved older brother who never missed a chance to belittle my career choices. Environmental consulting? He'd laughed, swirling his expensive scotch. Sarah, when are you going to get a real job? One worthy of the Morgan name. Our parents had nodded in agreement. Dad, the founding patriarch of Morgan Technologies, had added his usual commentary. Environmental science? What a waste of a good mind. She could have been running our R&D division by now. None of them had bothered to notice that my little consulting firm had become one of the most respected environmental compliance agencies in the tech industry. They were too busy building their empire to see that they were also building their own destruction. Put him through next time, I told Jade. I think it's time we had a chat. I turned to my window, looking out at Seattle's skyline. Morgan Technologies' headquarters dominated the view, 60 stories of glass and steel built on innovation and, as I well knew, countless environmental shortcuts. The phone rang almost immediately. Sarah. James's voice had lost its usual arrogance. Thank God. We need to talk. About what? I kept my tone neutral, professional. Your company's systematic violation of environmental regulations? The toxic waste disposal that's about to make headlines? Or maybe the falsified compliance reports? Silence. Then, how do you know about those? Because I'm very good at what I do, James. Something you might have noticed if you weren't so busy mocking my career choice. I could almost hear him squirming. Look, we need your help. The EPA audit found exactly what I warned you about 3 years ago, I cut in. When I tried to tell you your disposal methods were illegal. Remember what you said then? More silence. He remembered. Environmental regulations are for tree huggers, I quoted. Real tech companies can't innovate if they're worried about a few chemicals. Sarah, please. We're facing millions in fines. The board is talking about shutting down our main production facility. I opened the file on my desk. The real environmental impact report my team had compiled on Morgan Technologies. The one that showed damage far worse than the EPA had discovered. Your company isn't just facing fines, James. You're looking at criminal charges once the full extent of the violations comes to light. Dad could go to prison. What? His voice cracked. No, that's impossible. We only dumped toxic waste into protected watersheds? Falsified emissions reports? Ignored safety protocols that led to groundwater contamination. I flipped through the pages. Would you like me to continue? How long have you known about this? I've been tracking Morgan Technologies' environmental violations since I started my firm. Watching, documenting, building a case. I knew this day would come. I just didn't know if you'd be smart enough to call me before it was too late. The sound of him slumping in his chair came through the line. Mom and Dad don't know how bad it is. The board meeting is tomorrow. Sir, we need a miracle? I smiled. No, what you need is an environmental compliance overhaul that will cost more than your annual R&D budget. You need someone who understands both tech manufacturing and environmental science. Someone who can save your company from its own arrogance. Your consulting fees just tripled. I cut in smoothly. And that's just the starting rate. Full compliance will cost you significantly more. That's extortion. No, dear brother. That's the price of ignoring environmental science. The same science you called worthless. Jade's voice came through the intercom. Your next appointment is here. The EPA director wants to discuss Morgan Technologies. I heard James's sharp intake of breath. He hadn't known I had connections that high. The board meeting is at 9 a.m., he said quickly. Will you come? Text me the details, I replied. And James? Tell Dad to be there. He should hear exactly what his shortcuts have cost the company. I hung up and turned back to the window. Morgan Technologies gleamed in the morning sun, its perfect exterior hiding toxic secrets. Secrets I'd spent years documenting while they laughed at my career choice. Should I prepare the full presentation? Jade asked. Yes. All of it. Let's show them exactly what environmental science can do. I opened my drawer and pulled out my old graduation photo. The day I'd announced I was pursuing environmental science instead of joining the family business. Mom had cried, Dad had raged, and James had laughed. Have fun hugging trees, he'd said, while I build an empire. Now his empire was crumbling and only my worthless degree could save it. My phone buzzed, a text from my father. Whatever James is offering, I'll double it. This needs to go away. I laughed. They still didn't get it. This wasn't about money. This was about proving that environmental science wasn't just important. It was essential. And I was about to teach them that lesson in the most expensive way possible. The next morning I stood in my office preparing for the board meeting. My presentation was ready, containing every violation, every shortcut, every arrogant decision they'd made while dismissing environmental concerns as tree hugger nonsense. The board members are already gathering, Jade reported. Your father's pacing the room. James looks like he might throw up. Good. I gathered my materials. Let them sweat. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving them wrong, it's making them pay for their mistakes. And I was about to present them with a bill they couldn't ignore. Time to show them what a worthless degree can do, I told Jade, heading for the elevator. The Morgan Technologies boardroom awaited, and with it the chance to change not just the company, but the entire industry's attitude toward environmental science. This was going to be fun. The Morgan Technologies boardroom fell silent as I walked in. 15 faces turned toward me, a mix of recognition and confusion crossing their features. My father sat at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence diminished by worry. James stood by the presentation screen, his confident CEO facade cracking. What is she doing here? Dad demanded. Saving your company, I replied calmly, connecting my laptop to the display. And quite possibly keeping you out of prison. Prison? One of the board members leaned forward. Mr. Morgan, you said this was a minor compliance issue. It's nothing, Dad started, but I cut him off by bringing up the first slide. This, I indicated the satellite image, is the protected watershed your main facility has been contaminating for the past 5 years. The EPA estimates environmental damage at roughly $50 million. The room erupted in whispers. James's face had gone pale. And this, I continued, switching slides, is your toxic waste disposal record. Or rather, the fake one you've been submitting to regulators. Would you like to see the real numbers? Now wait just a minute. Dad stood up, his face reddening. You can't just come in here and... Actually, I can. I pulled out a thick folder. As the EPA's lead consulting expert on tech industry environmental violations, I have full authority to present these findings. Would you prefer I do it here or in front of a grand jury? The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah, James's voice cracked. Please. Please what? Please don't reveal how you've been cutting corners. Please don't show how your innovative manufacturing processes have been poisoning groundwater. Please don't tell them how many laws you've broken while mocking environmental science. I looked around the room, meeting each board member's eyes. Morgan Technologies faces 3 choices. 1. Continue ignoring environmental regulations and face criminal charges. 2. Shut down operations entirely until you achieve compliance, which would tank your stock price. Or 3. Hire my firm to implement a complete environmental overhaul. And your fees? A board member asked. Start at $15 million. Full compliance will cost closer to $50. I smiled. Still think environmental science is worthless? Dad slumped in his chair, decades of arrogance finally crumbling. We can't afford. You can't afford not to, I interrupted, switching to the next slide. Because this report goes public in 48 hours unless I file an intervention plan with the EPA. A plan that, coincidentally, I've already prepared. I distributed copies of my proposal. The board members flipped through pages detailing not just compliance measures, but innovative environmental technologies that could actually improve their production efficiency. This is remarkable, one of them said. These green manufacturing processes could reduce our costs by 30%. Yes, I agreed. It turns out environmental science isn't just about hugging trees. It's about sustainable business practices that benefit both the planet and the profit margin. James was reading the proposal, his expression shifting from despair to hope. Sir, this could work. This could actually save us. Of course it could. I've spent years developing these solutions while you were busy laughing at my career choice. The board voted immediately. They had no choice really. My proposal wasn't just their best option. It was their only option. There's one more thing, I said as they signed the contracts. I'm bringing in a permanent environmental compliance team. They'll report directly to me, not to Morgan Technologies management. You don't trust us? Dad asked quietly. You haven't earned trust. I met his eyes. You've earned oversight. The transformation of Morgan Technologies began the next day. We shut down the most toxic production lines, implemented new waste management systems, and began the long process of environmental remediation. Some executives resigned rather than adapt. Others, particularly younger engineers, embraced the changes enthusiastically. James threw himself into learning about sustainable manufacturing, finally understanding that environmental responsibility and business success weren't mutually exclusive. 6 months later, Morgan Technologies had become a model of green technology production. Our cleanup efforts made positive headlines. The stock price, after an initial drop, rose to record highs as investors recognized the value of sustainable practices. Dad took longer to come around, but watching the company's success finally opened his eyes. I was wrong, he admitted during a site inspection. About everything. About you. Yes, you were, I agreed. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The answer came 2 weeks later when he announced a $100 million investment in environmental technology research. Morgan Technologies will lead the industry in sustainable innovation, he declared to the press. Thanks to the vision of our new environmental director, my daughter. James approached me after the announcement. Remember when I said you were wasting your potential? You mean when you laughed at my graduation and said I'd never succeed? He had the grace to look embarrassed. Turns out you were the only one who saw the future clearly. Last month, a business magazine wanted to interview me about Morgan Technologies' transformation. They asked why I helped save the company instead of letting it face the consequences of its violations. I showed them before and after photos of the watershed we'd cleaned up. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying something, I told them. It's transforming it into what it should have been all along. Yesterday during a family dinner, our first since the takeover, Mom finally spoke up. I never understood why you chose environmental science, she said quietly. Now I see you chose to save us all. I looked around the table at my transformed family. Dad discussing renewable energy with suppliers. James excitedly sharing plans for new green technologies. The next generation of Morgans would grow up understanding that business success and environmental responsibility go hand in hand. You know what the best part is? I asked them. My worthless degree is now worth billions in saved costs, avoided fines and new opportunities. Not bad for a tree hugger, right? They had the good sense to stay quiet. Sometimes success isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about proving that doing right can be profitable. And sometimes, the best way to change an industry is to force it to face its own toxic legacy. As for my consulting fees, they're still triple the normal rate. Consider it an ignorance tax, payable to the environmental science graduate they once dismissed. Karma, like nature, always finds a way to balance the books.